What happens when a late-night host forgets the line between comedy and cruelty and chooses the wrong guest to cross? It only took a few sentences, no more than 30 seconds, for Jimmy Kimmel to push Mark Wahlberg too far. And in that brief moment, the balance of power on national television shifted forever. The cameras were rolling. The audience was laughing. Everything looked like a normal night on Jimmy Kimmel Live. But behind the bright lights and the polished smiles, tension was already silently building, waiting for a spark. Mark Wahlberg, dressed in a fitted dark suit, walked confidently across the stage. He greeted the crowd, shook Jimmy's hand, and sat down calm, collected, professional. He was there to promote his new film, talk about his family, maybe throw in a few jokes. But Jimmy Kimmel had other ideas. Jimmy leaned forward with that infamous smirk, one that always meant trouble for someone. "Mark, good to have you back," he said smoothly. Then, without missing a beat, he added, "So tell me, what's it like being Hollywood's most overpaid tough guy? Must be nice flexing a bit, saying 5 lines, and walking away with $20 million. The audience didn't laugh. Not this time. The smile on Mark's face faded just slightly, enough for the camera to catch. His jaw tightened, eyes sharp, but he didn't lash out. Not yet. He simply said, "I'm here to talk about the movie. A lot of people worked hard on it." His voice was calm, steady. But under the surface, a storm was building. Jimmy wouldn't let it go. "Come on, don't be shy," he pressed. "People want to know if acting is really that hard, especially when you've got muscles doing half the work for you." That was it. The energy in the room changed. The smiles disappeared. The laughter died quickly, like a candle in the wind. And for the first time in his career, Jimmy Kimmel didn't realize he was no longer in control of his own show. Because Mark Wahlberg wasn't about to let his life, his work, or his past be turned into a punchline. Keep watching, because what happens next shuts down the show completely. And before we go on, don't forget to like this video, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Respect isn't just a word in Hollywood, it's a currency. Careers rise on it, reputations are built on it, and in one careless moment, it can all be destroyed. That night on Jimmy Kimmel Live, the stakes were far higher than just a rude joke or an awkward interview. This wasn't about hurt feelings. It was about dignity, legacy, and the quiet truth that millions of people watching from home had felt before, being mocked, underestimated, or dismissed by someone who thought their platform gave them power over others. Mark Wahlberg wasn't just defending himself. Whether he intended to or not, he was speaking for every hard-working person who had ever been laughed at for dreaming too big, for every kid who came from nothing, for every actor, technician, and crew member who gave everything to their craft only to be reduced to a punchline on late-night TV. Because if someone like Jimmy Kimmel, someone with millions of viewers, a global audience, and a reputation for harmless humor, could drag a guest down in front of the world, and no one said anything, then what did that say about the industry? About us? About the way we treat each other when the cameras are rolling and the lights are brightest? And here was the truth Jimmy forgot: when you mock someone who's earned every inch of their path, when you turn their life's work into a joke, the consequences don't end when the commercial break begins. Mark Wahlberg knew that. The audience knew that. Even Jimmy, beneath the smile, beneath the late-night confidence, was starting to feel it. Because this wasn't just another interview. It was the moment the show went from entertainment to a lesson. A warning. A turning point. And the whole world was watching. Don't go anywhere, this is only the beginning. What Mark says next shocks the entire studio. And before we continue, make sure to hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The applause faded and the cameras zoomed in. Everything looked polished, the glossy desk, the perfect lighting, the audience smiling on cue. But beneath it all, there was something you couldn't script. Something real. Mark Wahlberg settled into his chair. Calm. Grounded. You could tell he wasn't there to play games, he was there out of respect for the show, for the audience, for his team who had worked months on his new film. His hands were relaxed on his lap, posture straight, eyes sharp but kind. He greeted Jimmy, thanked the crowd. A professional. But Jimmy? Jimmy wasn't in the mood for professional. He leaned back in his chair like a king on a throne, smirk fixed in place. His voice had that playful tone, but his words didn't. So, Mark, tell us, he said lightly. What's harder, acting in movies or counting all the money you make pretending to be tough? A few people laughed, not because it was funny, but because they thought they were supposed to. Mark didn't answer right away. His jaw moved slightly, tightening for a moment. He gave a small smile, the kind of smile people give when they're being polite, not amused. I'm here to talk about the film, he replied. A lot of people put their heart into it. But Jimmy kept going. Oh, come on, he pushed. You and I both know how it works. You show up on set, you flex, you glare at the camera, then boom, $20 million. Meanwhile, the rest of us are out here writing jokes, working every night to entertain America. The audience shifted. The laughter stopped. Mark leaned forward just an inch. Not aggressive. Not angry. Just present. I get up at 4 a.m. every day, he said quietly. Train. Work. Study scripts. Put my body on the line. People work hard on these movies. Don't disrespect that. The room shifted. This wasn't a joke anymore. Jimmy blinked, surprised. He wasn't expecting resistance. Not here. Not on his stage. So he tried to laugh it off. Oh, someone's sensitive tonight, he said, raising his hands mockingly. Relax, Mark, it's just comedy. But it wasn't comedy anymore. It was a line. And Jimmy had just crossed it. The audience fell silent. The cameras kept rolling. And for the first time, it looked like Jimmy Kimmel didn't know what to say next. And trust me, what happens after this changes everything. So don't go anywhere, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what Mark says next. The silence after Jimmy's last joke wasn't normal. It wasn't the kind of pause where the audience waits for a punchline. It was heavier. Thicker. Like everyone in the room could feel something shifting and no one could stop it. Jimmy looked around, expecting laughter, maybe applause. Instead, he was met with stiff shoulders and uneasy glances. But instead of stepping back, he did the one thing he shouldn't have, he pushed again. So tell me, Mark, he said, leaning back in his chair with a smug grin, at what point did Hollywood decide that lifting weights counts as talent? A few nervous laughs scattered in the back rows, but even they died quickly. Mark didn't blink. He didn't smile. He just looked at Jimmy with the kind of calm that makes people nervous. He took a breath before responding. You think that's all I do? Lift weights, he said, voice steady. You think I got here by just looking strong? Jimmy shrugged. Hey, I'm just saying what people are thinking. Some of us had to actually work our way up, no shortcuts, no muscles, no special treatment. And there it was. The disrespect hidden under just jokes. The arrogance hiding behind the desk, the suit, the cue cards. Mark leaned forward, not in anger, but in honesty. When I was 15, I wasn't in studios making jokes about people, he said. I was on the streets trying to survive. I didn't have a stage. I didn't have a safety net. I worked for everything I have. The audience sat frozen. No phones. No laughter. Just silence. Jimmy shifted in his chair. For the first time, the smirk slipped. He tried again, but his voice was tighter now. Whoa, someone's getting a little defensive. Mark didn't flinch. No, he said softly. I'm just done letting people disrespect what they don't understand. A stillness swept through the studio like the air itself was holding its breath. Producers in the shadows exchanged panicked glances. Camera operators stopped moving. Even Jimmy hesitated, sensing that whatever line he was balancing on was gone. And everyone in that room knew this was no longer an interview. This was a reckoning. It only gets more intense from here. What Mark says next leaves Jimmy speechless. Keep watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe before we move to the next part. In every live show, there's a moment when things stop being entertainment, when everything becomes real. This was that moment. Jimmy Kimmel tried to reclaim control with another smirk, another joke. Come on, Mark. Lighten up a little. This is a comedy show, not a therapy session. But it was too late for jokes. Mark leaned closer, not with anger, but with a calm intensity that was more powerful than shouting. His voice was low, clear, measured, like a man who doesn't need to raise his voice to be heard. You think this is a joke, he said. You think what I do is easy? You think I just show up, flex, read a few lines, and collect a paycheck? The audience didn't move. No coughs. No whispers. Nothing. Mark continued, every word hitting like a hammer. I get up at 4 in the morning. I train until the sun comes up. I rehearse until my eyes burn. I've broken bones on set. I've gone weeks without seeing my family. I've made mistakes. Real mistakes. And I spent years trying to become better. And you sit here and tell me it's easy? Jimmy tried to interrupt, but Mark didn't let him. No. You invited me here. You asked the questions. So now you can listen. Jimmy froze, half-open mouth, no words coming out. Mark wasn't yelling. He didn't need to. His voice carried something far stronger than volume, truth. You sit behind a desk and make jokes about people who risk everything to do what they love, he said. You think having a microphone gives you the right to tear people down? The crowd was still, but the tension in the room was alive, pulsing. Mark looked him straight in the eye. I'm not here for applause. I'm not here to look tough. I'm here because I respect this industry. I respect the people who give their lives to it. But I will not ever sit here and let someone disrespect that. Jimmy's face went pale. The smirk was gone. The audience, once ready to laugh, now sat in awe. This wasn't a guest anymore. This was a man taking back the room. Taking back the narrative. Taking back his dignity. And everyone watching could feel it. What happens next pushes the show to a breaking point. Don't miss it, stay with us, and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe before we go to the next section. Jimmy shifted in his chair. The confidence he wore like armor at the start of the interview was cracking fast. His fingers tapped nervously against his mug. The audience wasn't laughing anymore. They weren't cheering. They were just silent. Watching. Waiting. Jimmy forced a laugh, trying to sound casual, still pretending to be in control. All right, let's not get too serious. We're just having a little fun here, Mark. But Mark didn't smile. Didn't blink. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes locked on Jimmy. You invite people on this show, he said slowly, and instead of celebrating their work, you try to make them look small. You hide behind jokes, behind applause signs, behind cameras. Jimmy opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Mark's voice stayed calm, but every word cut deeper than the last. I've been in this business over 20 years. I've earned my place. I've worked when nobody was watching. I've failed. I've gotten back up. I've built something. And you think you can sit there and take all of that, and turn it into a punchline, just to get a laugh? You could hear someone in the audience gasp. Jimmy swallowed, glancing toward the crew, maybe hoping for a commercial break, a producer, someone to bail him out. But nobody moved. Mark wasn't done. You know the difference between you and me, he said. When I mess up, when I fail, hundreds of people lose jobs. Studios lose money. Fans lose faith. But when you take a cheap shot at someone sitting across from you, you get applause. You go viral. And tomorrow night, you'll do it again to someone else. Jimmy looked stunned. His usual comebacks were gone. His voice, when it came, was thin. I didn't mean it like that. Mark shook his head. Yes, you did. You meant every word. Because you thought I wouldn't say anything back. You thought I'd just smile, laugh it off, and let you disrespect everything I've worked for. Jimmy tried again to laugh it off. But his voice cracked. The cameras caught everything. The sweat forming at his temple. The tightness in his jaw. The panic in his eyes. Mark continued, his voice now deeper, more powerful. This isn't just about me. It's about every young actor who sits in this chair hoping to be respected. It's about every hard-working person who watches this show, who gives their all every single day, only to hear someone like you say their work isn't real, isn't hard, isn't earned. Nobody in that room moved. Not the audience. Not the cameras. Not even Jimmy. And then Mark said the words that shifted everything. You don't get to tear people down just because you have a platform. That line didn't just land. It echoed. The air felt heavier. The room felt smaller. It was no longer a talk show, it was a wake-up call. And from this point on, the show begins to completely unravel. What Mark does next shocks everyone. Stay tuned, and before we continue, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you're still with us. The studio was silent. No more jokes. No more fake smiles. Jimmy Kimmel sat frozen behind his desk, realizing this was no longer entertainment, it was real. Jimmy tried to recover. Let's just talk about the movie, all right? Mark shook his head. Calm, steady. You don't get to disrespect someone's life and then move on like nothing happened. He reached down, unclipped his microphone, and placed it on the desk. That quiet click echoed louder than any applause. I'm not angry, he said. I just respect myself too much to sit here and let you tear me down for laughs. Jimmy panicked. Wait, we can edit it out, just sit. Mark paused at the edge of the stage, looked back once. No edits. No do-overs. You made your choice. And he walked off. No music. No applause. Just silence and a broken host left staring at the cameras. Stay with us, what happened after the cameras stopped rolling was even more shocking. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe before we continue. Mark didn't scream. He didn't post online. He didn't need to. His walkout said everything. Jimmy sat alone at the desk, no jokes, no applause, just the weight of what he'd done. Producers whispered about editing it out, but it was too late. The internet had already seen the truth. People weren't angry about a joke, they were tired of seeing hard work turned into entertainment for someone else's ego. And the message was clear. Respect is not a punchline. Success doesn't give you the right to humiliate others. Real strength isn't loud, it's walking away with dignity. That night, Jimmy Kimmel didn't just lose control of his show, he learned a lesson in front of the whole world. Respect isn't demanded with a microphone. It's earned with humility. If you're still watching, make sure to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more stories like this.